Welcome to another episode of Tools, Talents, and Techniques. I'm your host, Dustin Sutton, and today I am very proud to bring on Mr. Jermaine Murray, the Jobfather. And Jermaine, first of all, thank you and welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So before we go into some questions and learn about your path and where you've been and what you're doing, could you just please give our audience a brief intro to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Jermaine L. Murray. You got to say the whole thing like a Tribe Called Quest. I go by online as the Jobfather. I'm a career coach and a recruiter, and I have just one mission right now, and it's to help 500 Black people get their new jobs in tech. We've been doing this since 2019, and I'm proud to say that as of today, right now, this very second, if you're hearing this, we're at 414.
Wow. So that mission that you started a while ago, I want to touch on that, but before we do that, I want to talk about, your origin story. Where'd you grow up, and when you were growing up, what did you think that your career was going to be when you reached adulthood?
Oh man, that's an interesting question. So I grew up in Toronto, Canada. Yes, the same city as Drake. No, I do not know Drake. I always get that question when I'm talking to people that are from Toronto, but I'm the first gen Canadian to two Jamaican immigrants. And when I was growing up, before high school, I thought I was going to make the NBA, but I stopped growing at like 5'9", so that was kaput. I'm also not really coordinated, or athletic, so that those dreams died pretty early. When I was in the first half of high school, I wanted to be a lawyer because I can talk and communicate, and everyone was always saying, well, because of like my big vocabulary, they could see me as a lawyer. And that dream died when my law teacher was like, lawyers average like 170 hours per week, and they're all
Hmm.
burnt out and they're all miserable. They make a lot of money, but they don't really get a chance to spend it. And it just sounded like a horrible existence. So then I pivoted to wanting to be an actor because I took a drama class, and it was the first time I ever got like a A+ in the class. And I was gonna go to acting school, but my parents said that they refused to pay tuition for someone to go to acting school. So my mom convinced me to go into journalism because she's like, "Oh, you got a nice, she's like, you're cute, you're handsome, but you got a voice for radio, right?" And she's like, "You should try and go on radio. It'd be great if you could become like the Black Larry King." And I was like, I like that. I like that. I like the sound of that. I want to be the Black Larry King." So I went to school for broadcast journalism. I graduated from the University of Guelph Humber, and I interned at a bunch of sports stations in Toronto. I interned at a really great radio station called G98.7 FM. And when I completed my internships, I couldn't get a job. It was like the hardest thing. And after probably like my sixth or 700 application, um, my dad was starting to give me some advice about what worked in the 70s. It's 2013 at this point. And he was like, back in my day, I would have just walked into the office and handed my resume in. And like, he's like, y'all new kids don't got that kind of grit. So I was like, okay, whatever. I went and I found a resume writer. I spent like $634.78. I wasn't really counting everything, but it
Wow.
stays with
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
And they gave me a 6-page resume for about 6 months of experience. And I drove right down to a sports studio. I walked right in, just like my dad said, and I dropped the resume in front of the secretary. And I said, "I'm here for a job." And she looked at me and she was like, "You must be out of your goddamn mind." So, and it was a very interesting conversation because she was a Jamaican lady as well, and she ripped me a new one, man. Like, she said to me, "You have the audacity to come in here, right? You don't have an appointment, you don't even know what kind of jobs we have available, and then you just put this resume down here. You don't know who to talk to." And she's like, she ripped me a new one, but the thing that she said that stuck out the most to me was, "You have a 6-page resume. Like, just ask yourself, if you where an HR director and you have 1,000 things to do, and some random kid walks into your office and hands you a 6-page resume. Do you really want to read that? And I was like, she had a point. So I
Yeah.
took that, I went home, and I really sat with that and I was like, okay, what goes into making like a really good resume? And once I figured that out, that was kind of like the start of my whole journey. It got to a point where my resumes were doing really, really well. And my friends and I, whenever we'd hang out, we would put we would put Indeed and like, LinkedIn and like the job boards up on the TV. And we started taking bets on like whether or not I get a call back, if I apply to a job. And, more often than not, I was getting call backs within like a week or 10 days, sometimes even 24 hours. And the bet stopped. And then it became, yo, can you help us get jobs? And I did resumes for my friends and they all got like their first adult jobs, actually like salaried positions. Uh,
Now, how
and
old were you at this point? Like, what age were you?
24, 23,
Okay.
24, 23. Yeah, 24. Actually, I think more 24, 25.
Okay.
But I got my butt chewed out by that lady when I was 23. I know
Hmm.
that much. But we started doing this when I was like, yeah, 24, 25, and like I decided to make it like a side hustle, and that's kind of how everything kind of built up. I ended up getting my first job in tech as a tech recruiter in 2018. So in the interim between that moment where my friends were getting jobs and then I still didn't know what I wanted to do, and I used to just job hop because I was like, you know, actors always do waiting tables until they get their big break. I'll take the same approach with radio until I get my big break. And I wasn't afraid to job hop or go to different positions, but it became exhausting because I was like, I want to just settle into something. It feels like I'm always starting over. And it's one thing to like start over in a domain you already know, but like I gotta like learn everything from the ground up. And I just want to have a little consistency. And that's when I decided, oh, let me see if I can get a job at PlayStation. I went on PlayStation's website and I looked for anything that was strong around communication, and I found a technical recruiter posting. I had everything the job asked for except for the 5 years of recruitment experience. So I was like, let me get this 5 years of recruitment experience because I'll always want to work at PlayStation. Who does not want a free PlayStation when they drop? Uh,
Is that the
and
case?
I
Is
worked
that
at
they give all their employees free PlayStations when they
Yeah,
drop?
yeah, actually, yeah. Like a lot of like I met a couple of their employees at Afrotech one year, and I asked, and they're like, "Yeah, we all got PlayStation 5s." And I was like, "Yo, I had to do like the Hunger Games to get my PlayStation 5." Like if
I
you,
remember how hard it was
yeah.
for people to find all those
Oh
things.
my God. Yo, I had to like I have a like a nice following on Twitter, and it got to the point where like people would like I tweet like, yeah, I'm in line for a PlayStation. Oh, it's sold out. Oh, yo, I'm in line. Yeah, it's sold out. And like it just happened over the course of like a year, and then it just got to the point where people were DMing me like, yo, go here right now. There's a PlayStation. Go here right now. There's a PlayStation, and it was just over and over. And then I finally got a PlayStation on my birthday, and like the whole timeline just were just like, yeah, because it was hard, man. It was hard.
So yeah, I guess that is an extra benefit, especially when things are so scarce like that. You
Mm.
can't find one.
Oh man, it was hard out there, but yeah, getting into tech, like that was my pathway into tech, and I think the funny thing is that I ended up going into business for myself before I even got the job at PlayStation, and like PlayStation were to offer me a job right now, I would turn it down, which sounds crazy when I think about it because like it was just like a goal for me, but working in an agency and seeing the first seeing like the opportunities that were in tech that were given to different people, and then taking a step back and realizing that not a lot of the people that were getting offers looked like me. I started being more deliberate with advocating for Black people and people that look like me to get these roles, and I started really seeing impact. And I always have trouble sleeping. I'm like since like I want to say like my 23rd, 24th birthday, I've always had a constant battle with insomnia.
Well,
And
ever
I
since that
remember,
lady, is it since that lady chewed you out?
you know what? I never made the connection, but maybe she's the one that's like haunting my dreams. Just like, yo, what do you think you're doing? But nah, like I've always just for some reason I always had like a battle with insomnia, and I remember when I made that deliberate effort to help a black person get a job, and like it was just a regular IT help desk job, Mac environment, and he was like, "Yo, this would be a dream come true. This would be a dream come true." It was like a $65,000 job. Allowed him to work remote like 2 days a week. This is before remote was like really a big thing, and like it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but like when you're somebody that hasn't made more than like 14, $13 an hour, and like a company has an offer for like 65,000 a year, that's life-changing money. And
Mm,
I remember when he got the job and he's like, yo, I got the job. And I'm like, yo, you got the job.
mm.
And it was just like a really good feeling. I remember I went to sleep. I think I knocked out and I was like sleeping for like a good 10, 12 hours that night. That never happened, but it was such like it was just such a satisfied sleep. I felt so rested. And I think, that lady notwithstanding, I think the restlessness that I had was just not by not having any type of direction in my life or just not knowing what I wanted to do with my life. And it felt like by not being that intentional or being on that path, I felt like I was wasting time. And I think that's what was like robbing me of my sleep when I think about it.
Yeah, finding that purpose in what you're doing and finding that direction. That's amazing. Was there a moment that you can recall when you really started to be more intentional? I mean, you kind of alluded to, helping your friends get in that one specific job. But when you first made the decision, like, I want to help people that look like me, was there a specific moment or was there a specific time period?
Yeah, there was actually one specific moment that I actually I had to like sit down and go like, yo, what like process it. We helped this guy get a job as a Java developer. And the way that our office was set up, you had to like anytime someone got an offer, they had to like physically come downtown Toronto, walk into the office to sign the offer. It was like this big show for like the office, but like they had like some data that said that retention rates tend to be higher because you can see who really cares enough to make the journey.
Oh,
So I'll never forget. It was he was an Eastern European gentleman. I can't remember his name, but I called him Silver Fox because his hair was just like silver, like platinum silver. But he was like a young dude, right? And I'll never forget. He came skipping into the office. I thought his head was gonna hit the door frame. He came skipping in the office, and he was just gallant. That's the only way I could think of. Like he was hype. And yo, dog, like, yo, what's good, man? Like, yo, I get it. You have me get the job. And he's like, no, 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 you don't understand. You don't understand. He's like, I'm like, all right, tell me. And he's like, so when I came to this country, right, I couldn't find a job because I didn't have Canadian experience. And this is something that a lot of immigrants in Canada suffer with when it comes to getting their first job. If you don't have Canadian experience, it's really hard to get a job because this seems like there's some gap or some difficulty when it comes to leveling and understanding the person's experience. But he's like, when I came to this country, I didn't have the Canadian experience and I couldn't get a job in Toronto. And my wife and I had to live in her parents' basement here. And to make matters worse, I wasn't able to get a job in Toronto, but I was able to get a job in Manitoba, which is like way out west, right? Um, I think Manitoba is like maybe like a 2, 3 hour flight from Seattle, and Toronto's an hour flight from New York City.
mhm,
So like in terms of the distance, you have to go like really
mhm.
far away. And he's like, I saw my son being born, but because I was working away from my family to provide, I missed my son's first words and I missed my son's first steps. And he's
Wow.
like, you just got me a job where I can work from home and I can walk my son to daycare every single day. I'll never have to worry about missing another moment in his life, right?
Wow.
And yeah, and I was like, yo, that's I'm like, yo, that's like really powerful. And I just had this voice in my head. I was like, damn, I'm so happy for this dude. I wish he was black. And I was like, ooh, wait, why? Whoa, what's going on there, Jermaine? Like, sit down and like process, like, why would you even like just come to that conclusion? And when I sat down, I kind of realized that, like, one, it was like a whole bunch of different thoughts in my head, but like one, myself and several of my friends, we have very fractured relationships with our dads. And we attribute that to the lack of financial opportunity that were granted our parents, right? Like a lot of our parents, like they didn't have the opportunity to get a good education. Um, my parents specifically grew up in a Jamaica that was basically in the midst of a civil war. If you watch the Bob Marley One Love video, the tension from the political parties that were fighting at the time, which ended up with Bob Marley getting shot. My parents lived in that neighborhood that was totally torn apart. Schools were shut down. People were shot. Like my dad saw his like first body when he was like 4, right? And it makes them jaded, and they take that anger and frustration out on their kids just because of a lack of opportunity. And I realized that for a lot of my friends, our parents grew up in similar circumstances where it's like really smart people, lack of opportunity, didn't get much choices in their life, right? And that bleeds into generation, and that's how you start getting like generational trauma. And I was just sad at like when I look at the people around me, how common of a theme that was. And it made me realize that like money isn't everything. Money doesn't like form somebody's morals per se, but like a lack of opportunity can really harden a person. And if that person doesn't invest in themselves to work and process that trauma, they pass it on to their kids. And that's exactly what was happening with us. So when I sat down, I made the connection. I realized that like this is a chance where, I might be able to contribute to somebody having a better relationship with their kid or with their family because they don't have that bitterness or that jadedness. They don't have that anger from a lack of opportunity or a lack of choice. That restlessness that was keeping me up at night in my sleep. I could only imagine what it was like, for my dad or for my mom or for my friends' parents, growing up in like basically like a civil war torn country, not knowing your next meal is coming from, right? Not knowing if you're going to survive on top of like at that point, it's almost like a luxury to start thinking about what am I going to do with my life? You know what I'm saying? So I felt like that was my way to kind of mitigate that and try to just like facilitate an opportunity where people didn't have to have tense relationships with their kids because it stems from a lack of opportunity, frustration, and trauma. And I was like, this feels like a really cathartic moment right now. And I felt like for the first time in my life, I went from being like a goofball to being somebody that was just built around a purpose. And I felt like it was a honed edge. And I was like, I'm not the most religious person. I'm very spiritual though. And I was like, if all right, I'm gonna try going down this path and I'm gonna see what God has for me. And if I get momentum and if I get that satisfaction, it means that I found my purpose. And it it was like a light bulb moment. Things started to connect. I started building up communities, and I really started keeping track in 2019 of just how many black people I was able to place. And in that one year, I was able to place 67 black people in new jobs in tech. And that was
Wow.
either by, directly referring them to my clients, that was by interviewing, prepping people. I would meet people at networking events. I put them in my phone in my WhatsApp group. I created a community in my WhatsApp group, and everyone knew if you had like an interview coming up, even if it wasn't through Jermaine, you could contact Jermaine, and Jermaine will do an interview prep for you. He'll make you feel good. He'll make you feel calm, right? He'll give you all the details, what to expect, how to negotiate salary, and change the lives of 67 people in my first year of doing that.
Yeah, that is amazing on so many different levels. I was taking notes here because I want to put a pin in a couple of these things that you said. Yeah, because this is amazing. first and foremost, not to make light, but you should have said spoiler alert on the Bob Marley movie because I haven't seen it
Oh,
yet. No,
well,
I'm
you.
kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I know.
Oh, thank
I know
God.
how. I know how that story ends.
Yeah,
Um, but on a serious note, when you had that moment and you said, oh, I wish this guy was black, and you said, wait a minute, hold on, like why did I think that? So like that moment that you had, that light bulb moment, that epiphany, if you will, I think it's so important when to be able to listen to what you're thinking and what you're feeling and then explore it. Because if you never do that, if you're just not you in particular, but like when one will just go on whatever they're thinking and feeling and just float through life. And there's an effortless to that, sure, but you never have the opportunity to pivot and make changes, make intentional decisions in your life in order to get to where you want to go if you have goals. So like you having that moment and whatever that was that you were thinking and feeling and being able to explore that, I think is so key for all people in every situation to be able to do that. And it sounds like that was a very pivotal moment for you to start making changes in your life.
yeah. And you know what? I give full credit to the exercise I did when I was like, what is it that you want to do? And I ended up looking on PlayStation's website. It taught me how to be introspective and how to like sort through my feelings and kind of like kind of like separate my present mind from my subconscious and like without sounding like a madman, having conversations with
Hmm.
myself and kind of just trying to understand like where certain feelings are coming from and like kind of not being afraid to embrace or explore those. And that's I was grateful for that experience because like in that moment I was able because that process is what got me to that point and I was like that's what made me trust that process and I was like let me try that process now, right? Because I grew up in like Toronto's very multicultural and I have a lot of friends from a lot of different backgrounds, so like my first thought was I hope I'm not racist, so I had to like really like sort through that and I'm not like I'm pretty happy to say I'm not, but it made me realize that like I was much more aware of discrepancies and challenges in my community than I thought that I was. The knowledge is always there, but I wasn't able to connect it to anything. And then things started to make a lot more sense. You start processing things and you start going through memories and things that you saw when you replay them. The story's different because you have that context. It's like watching a Christopher Nolan movie the first time, and you go back the second and third time, and you're like, "Oh, snap! That's what was going on."
Yeah, well, and so another thing that you alluded to in that, and you know, what are the things that people need and dealing with it to go into the next step of their life in their career and going into interviews. So could you elaborate a little more on your approach to recruiting or prepping people? Because you alluded to it, but I would love to hear
Yeah.
you dive a little deeper into your process.
So my process is all about storytelling, right? I've always used storytelling both as a contextual medium so that people are able to have an idea of like the theme that they want to communicate, but also as like a framework device for how people communicate to others. And what I mean by that is when I was trying to figure out whether or not recruiting was a right fit for me, it was at first hard because I had all these different jobs and I tried all these different things. Like I make a joke, but like I'm not lying when I say it. I've had no less than like I've worked for no less than like 30, 35 employers in my life, right? And prior to like the last cut, like the last five or six, those are all different industries and different things, right? And the challenge for someone like me who comes from like a nonlinear background in tech is that how do you connect all those experiences to give yourself a platform to communicate your value in an interview, right? And I had to figure out how to do that, and I realized it was like telling my story, and it was what am I trying to communicate from my story? When someone hears my story, what is the thing that I want them to walk away from? What is the perception of me I want them to have? And for me, that was I want people to know that I'm a strong communicator. I want people to know that I build relationships really well, and I want people to know that I'm somebody that people can put their trust in, so that when I make a suggestion or when I tell them my opinion, they know that it's coming from a place, from a relationship where I'm really thinking that this is in their best interest. And I can't make that decision for them, but I support whatever decision that they do, even if it's against what I suggest to do. Um, and like I was able to, like, that was like the theme of my professional profile throughout every single job. Like every single job, I used to sell construction equipment. I used to do directing and make music videos, right? I used to sell cell phones. I used to sell like comic books, and I was always like a top performer. And the reason why is because I was able to cultivate relationships. I was able to think about how things would benefit other people, and I wasn't always trying to make a sale, but I was always trying to make people satisfied, right? So, what's your problem? This is what you're going through. Have you tried this X, Y, and Z strategy? No. Have you tried A, B, and C? Well, I got one, two, three for you. You should try it out because I think it'll do. And people more often not bought into that. And when it came to like my recruitment interviews, I always told people like, I believe I make a good recruiter, not only because I've done resumes in the past and I've helped prep my friends, but it's because if you're saying to me, I have to sell a job opportunity to somebody, well, I'm not going to sell the opportunity to them. I'm going to make them want to buy it and pursue it. And the difference in that is them understanding how they're going to benefit from this new opportunity, whether it's having a better job, having a better boss, getting paid more work-life balance. Like that's always what it's been rooted in. And when I work with people, it's like, what's your story? If you think about every single job that you've ever had, right? What is it that you did better than somebody else? Even in jobs that you hated, there's always something that you did better than somebody else, whether it was being able to, like my dad's a polymath, like this, you give him like an algebra equation, he'll just hit you, with it, with the answer right then and there. And I always say, like, in another lifetime, he would have been a software engineer, right?
Right.
Or construction. But in every other job that you have, like you always did something, whether it's like accounting, whether it's communicating, building relationships, being the funny person, right? Whether it's being able to list every make and model of a car, right? Or just being able to do logistics. Like there's always something that you're better than somebody else in at that job. And I bet you if you find that in one job, you can see a pattern throughout all your other jobs, especially the ones that you've been really successful for. We connect all that, we make a theme, and whatever the job that you're pursuing now, you take that theme, you connect it to the problem that's at that job, and you're going to give them that solution that they need, right?
This exercise that you do, is this something that is like a worksheet, or do you have a system that you work through with people that you've developed?
Yeah, so it's this is what we usually do on my coaching calls, to be honest with you. So it's less of like a worksheet, and it's more like a work through where people are working and talking through and making those connections themselves. It's about asking the right questions, I would say, more than anything else. Like knowing what direction you want to go and then asking the questions that kind of allude to the path or even the gap as what's preventing you from getting from A to Z.
So with your work, and would you say that you focus a lot on the career, working with the actual person, the applicant, or like how do you go about finding the places for them and making the connections? Do you work and try to find open job positions to make those connections?
So in the beginning, because I was working at an agency, it was natural for me to have a portfolio of clients. Part of my job at an agency was to just cold call companies that had postings on Indeed or LinkedIn and convince them to work with us, right? So I had it was like a mix of both. I had companies that were looking to hire, and I always went through and cultivated a community. So like the way that would work, it would be for on my end with the candidates, it would be like, yo, I got this new opportunity at X company. If anyone's interested, hit me up. I will introduce you to the hiring manager, and I'll either get you the interview or I'll get you feedback, right? And if you get the interview, I'll interview prep you every step of the way, make sure you're feeling confident going in. Now because of it's been a mix of things because of like the platforms that I've been able to build off of LinkedIn and Twitter. Um, I have a lot of companies that are just reaching out to me, or through like the 414 people that we've helped, I have now contacts at those companies that we've placed.
All right.
So it's a matter of like, I've always looked at it as just building a community, to be real with you.
Yeah.
Community built on relationships, a community built on values, and like a community built on like-minded people that understand the struggle a lot more intimately than anybody else and just willing to like help somebody out. If I'm vouching for somebody, they'll trust it and they'll go out on a limb. A lot of times I've been fortunate enough where these people are people of influence, or these people are people on the recruitment team. So they're not so much exposing or putting a limb out for the person, as they're just like part of their job as highlighting like a valid candidate from a marginalized community. Sometimes they're just like an individual contributor or another people manager, and they just want to help somebody out. And if I'm vouching for them, they put their trust in me. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah. As far as you mentioned, like doing the workshops, are there things that you see consistently, or challenges that come up over and over that that people do and they stumble that they could implement immediately? And I would say on top of that, are there any specific platforms that are stronger, or tools that people could use to help them out in their job search?
Yeah, I would say the two main things that I find consistent, especially within like the Black community, is one, people are people have a mental blocker when it comes to recognizing and being willing to speak to their own achievements, right? I always find it interesting. People are so quick to actually own up anytime they've made a mistake, right? Accountability. But when it comes to taking credit for something good that you did, it's really hard because people have been beaten into their head like that's arrogance, right? That's being cocky, right? That's a faux pas. But like, if you don't speak up to like why you're dope, people are not going to buy into you being dope. And then the second thing is the framework that people use to tell stories or like to communicate their information or their answers. People either don't give enough information, they don't give enough information, they don't close the loop, or they ramble and they talk too much, without giving out the juicy details, and they kind of like distract people or make them tune them out. So those are like the two main things. And how I work on it is to I always talk about theme, and then I always ask people to think about literally the worst, most annoying, frustrating problem they dealt with at work and how they succeeded in dealing with it, because that in itself is a success, right? What was the biggest mess up that you had at work? How did you fix it? How did you walk through it? And then and this is the theater drama kid in me. I then tell them to like fall back on the 3-act structure that we see all the time in theater and plays and movies and novels, the beginning, middle, and end structure. And I always go, whenever you're telling a story, you start out by highlighting the problem and how it disrupted the status quo of whatever it is that you were doing. The second part of that story is you talk about how you identified the solution, right? And how you went about implementing the solution, how you executed the solution. Now, the biggest mistake that people make is they think that the story is done by just highlighting the problem and finding the solution and implementing the solution. But what you really need to do is to go into that third act, that resolution, right? Fully detail who benefited from implementing that solution. What happened when you implemented that solution, right? What was the rollout? What was the reaction from the stakeholders or from the people involved? Did you go back to the status quo, or did you go to a new status quo that was better than the old one, right? Tell your story in those three pieces. And especially if you're intentional about what story it is, what problem it is, you'll always be able to like accurately tell people why you're a value add to any environment. And like there's actual science behind this. Like there are reports that say that the reason why storytelling in this framework is successful is because um A, it makes for clarity. B, telling a story relaying information in a story also activates like the emotional centers in our brain. So we're attaching emotion to the information. It makes people empathetic, especially if it's like a story of overcoming a major challenge, right? It gets people to put themselves in your shoes. If people are more empathetic, they understand you more. They're giving you a wider room for to make mistakes, right? And if you don't make any mistakes, despite them giving that wider room, you come off as more impressive to people.
Wow, that's a good framework to use, and actually to put it in that framework as far as like telling a story and then breaking down into three parts, I think is something that people can digest and they can take all of their information and be able to move forward with that.
Yeah, it's worked for 414 people.
So what you mentioned Twitter a couple of different times, and I know you have a significant amount of followers on LinkedIn. So I know you're proficient. You're working in, staffing and hiring, recruiting and coaching. So I know that's a good. But what manner do you utilize Twitter? And I'm
It's
and I'm
so
really asking because I don't spend that much time on Twitter. I do have
yeah,
an account. I get things, but um, when I see the people that are active there and they actually are doing business on there, I'm like, well, it's a different thing to me. So I'm always interested to see how people are utilizing it.
yeah. Twitter's funny, man. Like Twitter is funny. Twitter to me is the platform where the most authentic communications, community building, and relationships happen. It's kind of degraded a bit since the whole Elon Musk buyout happened, but like I initially used Twitter. Twitter was actually like my first platform, and like LinkedIn surprisingly like surpassed it within the year. But I initially used Twitter just on the hand of like I just want people to understand what the behind the scenes look like
Yeah.
for hiring managers and recruiters, right? And on top of that, like I also get to share all my opinions on topics that are dear to me, everything from anime to video games to sports. I go crazy during NBA season because I'm a Toronto Raptors fan, and like ever since we won the chip, it's been nothing but just pain on top of pain on top of pain. I had a friend joke with me the other night. He was like, I was like, because I'm in Spain now, and if I'm watching a Raptors game, the game won't end till like 5 a.m. for me. And then someone was like, every night Jermaine has the choice of going to bed with the woman of his dreams or watching the Raptors play. He always makes the wrong choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but like, so it's good for community building because I always tell people too, when it comes to networking, don't fall into the trap of believing that everybody is their job, right? You I've recruited people and I've recruited people that got into arguments about whether or not Goku or Superman can win in a fight. And it'd be like, you have a little bit of banter with somebody, you have rapport with somebody, and then it's just like, yo, what do you do? Oh, you're an engineer. Oh shoot, like, yo, you looking? You tell me, talk to me, right? And that just opens up the relationship right from there. So I use my Twitter platform to educate people on the behind the scenes stuff when it comes to like recruitment and job searching, but also just to like talk and just share opinions and collaborate in communities. Back in 2019, Paris Chandler, aka Paris Athena, started this hashtag called Black Tech Twitter, and it was a way to kind of centralize and allow people to find other Black people that worked within the tech space because Black people are among like the lowest represented group in tech. So it's like a lot of times, like when a Black person's working a tech job, it's not uncommon for them to be the only Black person in the company, right? So
Yeah.
it's helpful to like find and communicate with people and kind of share stories, everything from like microaggressions for your bosses to just like success stories and making people know that like it's possible. So I use it to like build up community. I use it to like drive business. I use it to just educate and inform people. And I use Twitter actually to, Twitter was a platform I used to like do my counts when it came to like our success stories for helping people get into tech. A lot of them actually started out on Twitter, but like every time I had a success, especially within 2021, um, so in 2019 I helped 67 Black people, and in 2020 I helped 85 Black people get new jobs in tech. Um, I was trying to go for 100 in 2020, but like if you remember, the pandemic shut everything down for like a good 2, 3 months. Nobody was hiring. We thought we were like in this big like recession more or less, which we are now, was just delayed for a couple of years. But I was really actually like my pride took a hit because I was like, I probably would have hit the 100. I was 15 away from it. I was like, I probably would have hit the 100 if we didn't stop for those couple of months. So I made a public declaration on Twitter saying I'm going to help 100 Black people get new jobs in tech in 2021. And every time I help somebody get a job, we post their success story on Twitter, we share it, they tag themselves in it. And it was just a way for me to like, we have this phrase in tech, build in public, right? Don't be
Mm.
afraid to build in public. Don't be afraid to fail in public, right? Take the feedback, take the energy, take the wins, take the losses. So I was building in public, and by September, I hit 100 Black people, and by December it was 126. So I,
Oh,
I, I exceeded my goal. My stretch goal was 120. So I even like exceeded the stretch goal. And that also helped me build that community up on Twitter. It helped people see me as a resource as well. So like people know if they hit me up on Twitter and they have career advice, they don't necessarily need to book a session with me. They can just hit me up, and I'm more than happy to answer them, let them know what's good. Because I always
what
say if I can answer it as like a email or like a tweet, I don't need to charge you.
there's a couple of things that you've alluded to, and at least that I've kind of pulling from what you're saying, and you mentioned authenticity and being yourself. And when people are going to jobs, they're not being their full self for whatever
Yeah.
reason. There's a block. And I wonder, through these past few years and you having the success that you've had, is there anything that you've learned about yourself that that you implement in your life that you understand now?
Yeah. I learned that I have ADHD, and because of that, I'm a very chaotic and disorganized person. And because of that, I'm addicted to discipline and having like a direction to go into, right? So what that whole process taught me was about myself, but also that like I'm a very goal oriented person. I like being goal oriented because if I don't have something to work towards, I'm just spinning my wheels in a circle, wasting energy, feeling unproductive. And that unproductiveness leads to feelings of guilt, which robs me of my sleep, which makes me cranky, which makes me a poor version of myself for the people I love
Um,
and the people around me. So it's always taught me to have something that I can work towards, but also that like have something I'm passionate about, because if I'm not passionate about it, I'll disengage with it. But if I'm passionate about it, I'll obsess with it. Now, the challenge is finding the balance and making sure that the obsession doesn't become unhealthy. Um, my girlfriend had to actually like we stopped at 126 in December because my girlfriend's like, you're gonna kill yourself if you don't
mm,
if you don't chill and relax and like take some time. I used to work 7 days a week. She made me take Sundays off. Sundays like my holy day of do nothing because of it.
mhm.
And she's like, even God rests. Like, is your ego so big that you think you're better than God? And I was like, all right, damn, girl, all right, cool, all right, cool. I'll rest on the Sunday. So, but yeah, it did teach me about how to keep myself motivated, how to keep myself going, and it also taught me how to listen to my body and rein myself in when I need to.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, being able to do it from the very start, when you mentioned before about having that moment and stopping and thinking about, why you felt that way and why you thought that way, and then now having somebody around you that knows you, like your girlfriend, and being able to tell you like, hey, you're at that point of understanding, maybe you got to do this, and so now you have a teammate with you working on that. So
Yeah,
that's pretty amazing. That's special.
yeah, yeah. She checks me when I'm tripping.
Well, there you go. To put it simply, to check you when you're tripping. One of the things that I was just thinking about, the building in public thing. Um, you know, there's a project that I'm working on. I'm building something for golf. It's like wearable technology for golf. And part of the process that I've been learning is I've never built a product before, and I'm having so much fun doing it. It is really in a lot of ways a great creative outlet for me. However, going through the process and understanding that, there's patent information, there's certain things that you don't want to put out there because then a bigger company might just come scoop it up and do it. And so there's a little bit of cloak and dagger with that. But I really feel like something that I've learned about myself is that I actually do need to give my ideas and my thoughts and things sunlight to let them grow. Because if I don't put it out there and put it in public, there's less gas to go get it. There's less fuel to go after it. And so that's just an interesting thing that I've learned through my process of self development in my life and my career. It's a real thing.
Yeah, there is. I always
It
said
does.
like I can't remember who said it, but somebody said ideas are free, hustle is sold separately, right?
Mm,
So like I've always kind of appreciated that because like at the end of the day it comes down to execution and but like I've always also one of my I think this is also like just a continuation of my whole story and value driven philosophy for my clients because it's for myself really as well. I believe that when it comes to like working around sensitive information, it's not so much sharing the sensitive information that you need to focus on, it's sharing details about the mission and the problem that you're trying to solve, right?
mm,
Because there are a lot of people that are trying to solve this problem, right? Especially when it, like, for example, like I know about like 6, 7 other people that are trying to solve the problem of increasing representation of Black people in high impact industries. I'm not the only person that does it. I'm the only person that does it my way, right?
right.
Um, and I'm not going to tell every single secret about how I do things my way, but I will share the observations around the problem. I will share the jubilation when it comes to successes around the solution. And I will always share uh, topics and thoughts and perspectives of people of my community, especially when like either external or internal factors makes it not only appropriate but necessary for us to share those thoughts. Um, but I always focus on the mission and I always focus on celebrating the solution and uplifting the community.
Before we take off, I want to first of all thank you for taking the time and thank you for the mission and everything that you've been doing. Congratulations on your success. What's next for you? What's your next goal? What's your mission? Is there been any change? Did you move the goalposts at all for your next target?
Yeah, I kind of did actually, which was hilarious. So, um, I when I hit that 126, I like I said, my girlfriend made me chill because she's like, "You're gonna kill yourself," but like I felt so empty. I didn't feel empty, but like I was like, damn, what am I like? I've made this like my whole personality for the year. What am I gonna do now? Right. So and that's kind of how I came up with like, we're gonna help 500 people. I added all the numbers together that we hit, and I was like, all right, what's the next milestone here? And it's like 500. So I knew going into this that when we hit the 500, I need to have another thing lined up, or I was gonna drive myself crazy. So the next phase of this is that we're going to be helping out 250 people, 200 people across 5 major high impact industries, not just tech, right? Tech can be included. We'll help like an additional 200, but the goal is to help 1,000 people across 5 different industries, preferably finance, trades, healthcare, tech, and there's one more construction. No, construction and trades. There's one more, but like generally speaking, it's to help 1,000 people and to kind of diversify where mental health. There we go.
Hmm.
It's to diversify and help people because the reality is that not everybody needs to or has aspirations to work within the tech industry, and the stuff that we teach and the stuff that we're able to like talk about and the confidence that we're able to give shouldn't just be exclusively held within the tech industry. Tech was the starting point because I thought I love the fact that a lot of tech opportunities give for an opportunity for people to think about work-life balance. Salaries tend to be higher. And also I'm just a blurred. I'm a black nerd. Like it just felt natural, right? But I wanted to be where I when like someone asked me for like what my big picture is and like if I could have everything right now, what would it be? And I always say that I want it to be where if there is a black person somewhere in the world and they're like, hey, I need a job, I want a career that's worthwhile or fulfilling, I don't know where to start. I want to be the first solution that comes to their mind because then they can come to whatever platform I'm on, whatever platform I got, and they can find the information they need to get started to get to their career. And that shouldn't just be exclusive to tech. It should be for all industries.
Well, it's a lofty goal, and I'm sure that you will do it. And I mean, it's just really impressive what you're building and who you are and what you're doing. So again, thank you so much for your time today and for everything that you're doing. And before we go, do you just want to say one more thing about any parting notes and tell the listeners where they can find you?
You can find me on Twitter at the Jobfather with two underscores after the R. You find me on LinkedIn at Jermaine L Murray, or just search up the Jobfather. I got the Jamaican flag in my name. Cause I gotta let everyone know I'm Jamaican, right? You can find me on Instagram at Jermaine the Jobfather, TikTok at the Jobfather. And one last quote I will give out is from one of my favorite books, Chapter House Dune by Frank Herbert. It's seek freedom and be captive of your desires, seek discipline and find your liberty.
Great one to leave on. Jermaine, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.